For the president to do this in front of the NATO Secretary General, who had gone around asking countries for more money and had been fairly successful, Germany's now going to contribute up to 1.5%. It is just bewildering why he chose now to do it. I think perhaps he felt it was playing to a domestic audience in the United States. You know, he sounded, very aggrieved, talking about how the taxpayers, American taxpayers, have to do this, and NATO countries are paying their fair share. And I also think, I do think there's a certain amount of politics of grievance here. Trump knows certainly how unpopular he is in Europe and how much he is, how unpopular he is with the other world leaders. And he certainly does not have a good relationship with Angela Merkel. And do not discount just the sort of impulsive nature of this and the anger he brings to this meeting.
So let's play for you President Trump, fulfilling Putin's dream. Take a look.
I think it's very sad when Germany makes a massive oil and gas deal with Russia, where you're supposed to be guarding against Russia, and Germany goes out and pays billions and billions of dollars a year to Russia. So we're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting all of these countries, and then numerous of the countries go out and make a pipeline deal with Russia, where they're paying billions of dollars into the coffers of Russia. So we're supposed to protect you against Russia, but they're paying billions of dollars to Russia, and I think that's very inappropriate. And the former chancellor of Germany is the head of the pipeline company that's supplying the gas. Ultimately, Germany will have almost 70% of their country controlled by Russia with natural gas. So you tell me, is that appropriate? I mean, I've been complaining about this from the time I got in. It should have never been allowed to have happened. But Germany is totally controlled by Russia. I think it's something that NATO has to look at. I think it's very inappropriate. You and I agree that it's inappropriate.
NATO is an alliance of 29 nations, and there are sometimes differences and different views and also some disagreements. And the gas pipeline from Russia to Germany is one issue where allies disagree. But the strength of NATO is that despite these differences, we have always been able to unite around our core task to protect and defend each other, because we understand that we are stronger together than apart. I think that 2 world wars and the Cold War taught us that we are stronger together than apart.
But how can you be together when a country is getting its energy from the person you want protection against, or from the group that you want protection?
Because we understand that when we stand together, also when dealing with Russia, we are stronger. I think what we have seen is that...
No, you're just making Russia richer.
Well,
you're not dealing with Russia, you're making Russia richer.
So I think that even during the Cold War, NATO allies were trading with Russia. Then there have been disagreements about what kind of trade arrangements we should go into.
I think trade is wonderful. I think energy is a whole different story. I think energy is a much different story than normal trade. And you have a country like Poland that won't accept the gas. You take a look at some of the countries, they won't accept it because they don't want to be captive to Russia. But Germany, as far as I'm concerned, is captive to Russia because it's getting so much of its energy from Russia. So we're supposed to protect Germany, but they're getting their energy from Russia. Explain that. And it can't be explained, you know that.
Oh, Andrea Mitchell, I'm going to let you choose where you want to begin here with your analysis, if you can put it into words.
It is so shocking. And, my first NATO summit was to Bonn, then the capital of Germany, with Ronald Reagan in 1982. And Europe was aflame with attacks from the left wing against the collective deployment of intermediate range missiles, and they all stood together, Reagan leading the way. And to see an American president there with his Secretary of State speechless, the NATO ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to NATO, a very strong and smart woman, Kay Bailey Hutchinson, former Texas senator, who's just speechless, obviously, her commander-in-chief, her leader, is sitting there and deriding Germany. And John Kelly, a retired general, watching this, it's just absolutely stupefying that he would say Germany is controlled, is captive to Russia, and that would be his opening gambit. Elizabeth Wimler is absolutely right. He's playing to a domestic audience, this politics of grievance, as he anticipates protests against him, certainly in London. He has to stay out of London because it's so risky for him politically and perhaps, for other reasons. So, he'll be going to Windsor Palace and other places. But it's just extraordinary to watch this happen. And his facts are wrong, as Elizabeth has pointed out, as you all have been pointing out. And his politics are wrong. And it is just a disgrace for the United States to open a NATO meeting like this.
Yeah, and David Ignatius, again, it's important for those that, that are just joining. It's important for Donald Trump supporters. It's important for all Americans to understand. It's important for people working in the Trump White House to understand. They may just actually be ignorant of the facts that Europe has a bigger defense budget than Russia. Europe has as big a defense budget as China. Europe has been a bastion against Soviet aggression since 1947 and against Putin's aggression since the turn of the century. And as the West Germans always reminded us whenever we had problems from 1947 to 1989, they say, we are your most loyal and faithful children. And of course, that is saying, we do what you tell us to do. We are standing at the gates of the Berlin Wall, and we are your allies ready and waiting. Donald Trump, of course, doesn't remember that because he doesn't follow history. But that is the case. Germany has been our most steadfast ally against Russia since 1947.
Germany is the bedrock of this alliance that has been the centerpiece of American strategy for dealing with Russia. We have to remember that Germany and other European countries have supported the sanctions that the U.S. proposed after Russia invaded Crimea, even though those sanctions cost the Europeans, especially the Germans, a lot in terms of things they could sell, deals they could make. They stood by that policy, partly because we asked them to, and partly because they knew that Russia potentially threatened them. When I watch these pictures of Donald Trump, the wrecker, arrive at that breakfast, I think back 2 weeks ago to all of the NATO officials, including Jens Stoltenberg, who he was haranguing across the table, and their preparations. Is there some way we can make it work out so we can have a good NATO summit, so we can talk about all the good things we're doing? In fact, NATO's doing a lot of good things. They're putting more troops east as tripwires to potentially challenge the Russians as if they were ever to move. They're continuing to support U.S. operations in Afghanistan. There's discussion of training troops in Iraq to stabilize Iraq. All these things that they had lined up as potential achievements. The president arrives, boom, it's like he knocked over the whole set of blocks. And you can only imagine what Stoltenberg, what Kay Bailey Hutchinson, our NATO ambassador, were thinking as they sat next to the president as he went through this. Just one final point. We've used this phrase before, but the world that we grew up in was well described by Dean Acheson, one of the creators of NATO and these great institutions. He said he was present at the creation. And watching this morning's footage, I think we all wondered whether we were present at the destruction, at the moment at which this began to come apart.